I grew up believing that family was the one thing you could always rely on. My parents weren't perfect, but they instilled in me this deep sense that no matter what happened in life, breakups, job losses, betrayals, your family would still be there when everything else crumbled. My younger sister, Elara, was the person I felt that bond with the strongest. We had the kind of sibling relationship that swung between teasing each other mercilessly and defending one another like our lives depended on it. I'm the older brother, Lucian. I'm 28 now, but the story I'm about to tell started when I was 25, just as Elara was finishing college. She had always been the dreamer of the family, with her sketchbooks full of designs and her tendency to romanticize almost everything. I admired it, honestly, where I was cautious and analytical. She threw herself into life with this fearless energy. It was around that time she introduced us to someone new, Dorian. He wasn't her first boyfriend, but from the way she looked at him, I could tell this was different. He had this polished charm, the kind of presence that filled a room without him even trying. He was articulate, ambitious, and he had that knack for making you feel like you were the only person in the room when he spoke to you. I'll admit it, I liked him at first. He seemed good for her, like he balanced out her free-spirited nature with his grounded confidence. Our parents welcomed him in quickly. My mom especially adored how polite he was, how he always offered to help with dishes after dinner, how he seemed to listen intently when she spoke about even the most trivial things. For a while, it felt like we had gained an extension of our family. I wasn't jealous. If anything, I felt relieved. Elara had someone who looked out for her when I couldn't always be there. But as time passed, I started noticing subtle things. Nothing dramatic at first, just small comments Dorian made that rubbed me the wrong way. For example, if Elara excitedly shared one of her new design sketches, he'd smile but then casually dismiss it as cute before pivoting the conversation back to something about his career. If we were talking about family memories, he'd make jokes about how old-fashioned our traditions were. He never said anything outright cruel, but there was an undertone I couldn't shake, like he saw himself as above us. I brushed it off at first. Maybe I was being protective, maybe I was reading too much into it. But I knew my sister well enough to notice that over time, she stopped showing us her sketches or talking as much about her passions. She laughed off his dismissive remarks, but her laughter felt hollow. And while my parents didn't seem to catch it, I couldn't ignore it. Still, I told myself that relationships are complicated. Maybe this was just the adjustment phase. Maybe Dorian would warm up more, or maybe I just needed to let go of my skepticism. For Elara's sake, I tried. I kept quiet and kept things cordial, even though something in my gut whispered that things weren't as perfect as they seemed. That whisper grew louder the night of my father's birthday dinner. We were all gathered around the table, laughing, reminiscing about old family trips, when Elara started to share a memory about when we were kids, something funny and deeply personal. Before she could even finish, Dorian interrupted her, brushing her off with a comment that made the entire table go silent. It wasn't just dismissive, it was cruel. That was the first time I realized this wasn't just about me being protective. Something deeper was going on, and it was the moment I began to question whether Elara's happiness was really what it looked like on the surface. That birthday dinner changed something in me. The way Dorian cut Elara off, it wasn't just disrespectful, it was calculated. He smirked afterward, like he wanted everyone to feel small for even entertaining her story. I looked at my sister then, waiting for her to push back, to roll her eyes, to remind him that this was our family table, our space. But instead, she just lowered her gaze, forced a smile, and said nothing. I don't know if my parents didn't notice or if they just chose not to. My mom quickly tried to smooth things over, changing the subject while my dad gave an awkward chuckle. But I couldn't laugh it off. I couldn't stop staring at Elara, at the way she shrank in on herself like she had been conditioned to accept moments like that. After dinner, I cornered her in the kitchen while everyone else lingered in the living room. I asked if she was okay, if Dorian's comment had bothered her. She brushed me off with a laugh and said I was being too sensitive. That was her favorite line whenever I voiced concerns, too sensitive. It stung, but I let it go for the moment. Over the weeks that followed, though, The pattern became harder to ignore. Dorian wasn't just dismissive in subtle ways. He was controlling. I noticed Elara stopped coming over to the house as often. She started canceling plans with me, claiming she was busy, but when I asked what she was doing, her answers were vague. One day, she admitted that Dorian didn't like her wasting time on things that weren't productive. That included family dinners. That included me. It was like he was building a wall around her, brick by brick, and I was on the outside watching it grow taller every day. The final straw for me came one Sunday afternoon. Elara had agreed to meet me for coffee, something we hadn't done in weeks. I was looking forward to it, hoping we could talk openly, maybe even laugh the way we used to. She showed up late, visibly stressed, and halfway through our conversation, her phone buzzed. The way her face changed when she saw the screen made my stomach turn. "It's Dorian," she said, already grabbing her things. "Can't it wait?" I asked, a little sharper than I intended. Her shoulders tensed. He doesn't like when I don't answer. I stared at her, stunned. "Elara, that's not normal. You shouldn't have to jump every time he calls." She froze for a second, then shot me this look, half warning, half plea. "Lucian, please. You don't understand. He cares about me. He wants what's best." But her voice cracked on the last word. And that was when I knew. She was trapped in something she couldn't even admit to herself. That night, I lay awake replaying everything, his comments, her silence, the way she seemed smaller every time I saw her. And for the first time, I admitted to myself that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't just my imagination. Maybe Dorian wasn't just arrogant. Maybe he was toxic. The question was, what could I do about it? Because as much as I wanted to protect her, I knew confronting him head-on could backfire. And worse, if Elara thought I was attacking the person she loved, she might choose him over me. And that was a choice I wasn't sure I was ready for her to make. It didn't take long for the tension between me and Elara to boil over. I had been holding back, biting my tongue every time Dorian made a smug comment or every time Elara brushed me off with that practice smile. But one night, it all came spilling out. We were at our parents' house for dinner again, something that was becoming rare for Elara. She had shown up with Dorian, and from the second they walked in, I felt the air shift. My mom was delighted, as always, but I could see the faint strain on my dad's face. He wasn't as quick to gush over Dorian as she was. Dinner started fine enough, though fine meant Dorian doing most of the talking. He dominated the conversation, work achievements, travel plans, opinions on politics, even on things he clearly didn't know much about. He had this way of sounding confident, even when he was dead wrong. And Elara? She sat there, nodding along like his personal cheerleader. At one point, I tried to pull her into the conversation, asking if she'd been working on any new designs. Her eyes lit up for just a second, my sister, the dreamer, flickering back to life. But before she could answer, Dorian chuckled and said, "She hasn't had much time for doodling lately. I've been keeping her busy with real projects." The table went quiet. Elara's face flushed red, and she looked down at her plate. Something in me snapped. "Real projects?" I repeated, my voice sharper than I intended. "Her art is real. It's not just some silly hobby." Dorian leaned back in his chair, that smug smile plastered on his face. "Relax, Lucian. I'm just saying she has potential for more than wasting time scribbling in sketchbooks. Don't you want her to succeed?" That was it. The way he twisted it, as if he knew what was best for her, as if her dreams didn't count unless he validated them. I couldn't stay silent. "You don't get to decide what success looks like for her," I snapped. "She's always been passionate about her art. That's who she is. If you can't respect that, maybe you don't respect her at all." The words hung heavy in the air. My mom tried to interject, but Elara shot me a glare that cut deeper than anything Dorian could say. "Lucian, stop," she said, her voice shaking. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Elara, I know," she interrupted, louder this time. "You're always judging him, always looking for reasons to tear him down. Why can't you just accept that I'm happy? Why can't you support me, for once, instead of trying to control my choices?" Her words hit me like a punch. Control her? That's the last thing I thought I was doing. All I wanted was for her to see what I saw. That Dorian wasn't lifting her up, he was slowly breaking her down. But in her eyes, I was the enemy now. Dorian didn't say much after that. He didn't need to. He sat there with that smug, victorious look, like he had just won a battle without lifting a finger. And in a way, he had. He didn't have to argue with me. He just let Elara do it for him. The rest of dinner was painfully awkward. When they left, Elara barely looked at me. My parents didn't say anything, but I could tell they were shaken. That night, I realized something terrifying. If I kept pushing, I risked driving her even closer to him. But if I stayed silent, I might lose her anyway. Either way, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and every choice I made would push us further into the void. After that dinner, nothing felt the same. Elara stopped coming around as often, and when she did, Dorian was always glued to her side like a shadow. It was as if he couldn't risk leaving her alone with us for even a moment. And maybe he was right to be worried, because I wanted nothing more than to pull her aside and shake some sense into her. Weeks passed. My calls went unanswered more often than not, and when she did pick up, our conversations were clipped, rushed, like she was afraid of being overheard. My texts would get one-word replies, or sometimes no reply at all. I told myself she was busy, that she was just caught up in her new life, but deep down, I knew it was more than that. Dorian was pulling her away from us, piece by piece. One evening, after nearly a month of barely hearing from her, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to her apartment unannounced. I knew it was risky if Dorian was there. It could turn into a scene, but I couldn't just sit around and watch her disappear. When she opened the door and saw me standing there, she froze. Her eyes darted behind her, and I could hear faint music coming from inside. For a second, I thought she might slam the door in my face. Instead, she stepped outside quickly, pulling the door shut behind her. "Lucian, what are you doing here?" she whispered, her tone sharp. "I needed to see you," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "You've been avoiding me, Elara. I just want to talk. Just us." She glanced at the door again, biting her lip. "This isn't a good time. Then when is?" I pressed. "I miss you. Mom and Dad miss you. You barely come around anymore. And when you do, it's like you're not even the same person." Her face tightened, and for a moment I thought she might break down right there. But instead, she straightened her shoulders, putting up that wall again. "I'm fine, Lucian," she said flatly. "I'm happy. Dorian makes me happy. You don't have to worry." I took a deep breath, fighting the urge to argue. "Elara, look at me. Do you really believe that? Because every time I see you, you look smaller. Dorian doesn't lift you up, he controls you. And I'm scared that one day you're going to wake up and realize you don't even recognize yourself anymore." Her eyes welled up, and for the briefest second, I saw the truth flicker there. But then it was gone. She shook her head, blinking back the tears. "You don't understand him," she said, her voice trembling. "You only see what you want to see. He pushes me because he believes in me. He wants me to be better. Why can't you just accept that?" I wanted to scream, to tell her that love doesn't mean tearing someone down until they're unrecognizable. But I knew pushing harder right then would only make her retreat further. So I just stood there, helpless, watching as she pulled away from me again. "I should go back inside," she whispered finally. "Please don't come here unannounced again. It makes things harder." And just like that, she slipped back into the apartment, closing the door between us. I stood there on the cold concrete, staring at the door, feeling like I had lost her all over again. And the worst part was, I didn't know how to get her back without pushing her further into his grip. For the first time in my life, I realized that being her brother might not be enough to save her. It all came to a head one rainy Saturday evening. Mom had called me, her voice tight with worry, saying that she couldn't watch things unravel any longer. Dad was quiet, but I could hear the tension in his breathing in the background. They wanted a family meeting, all of us in the living room, to talk. I knew exactly what this meant. Elara would have to choose. When she arrived, the rain dripping from her coat, I could see how exhausted she looked. Dorian followed, calm and collected as ever, his arm lightly draped over her shoulder. It wasn't just possessiveness, it was a silent message. "I'm in control here." Mom started, her voice soft but firm. "Elara, we're not here to attack anyone. We just want to understand. We love you, and we're worried." Alara's eyes darted to Dorian, then back to us. "I don't need a lecture," she said quietly. Everything is fine. I stepped forward, trying to keep my voice steady. Elara, it's not fine. I've been watching this happen for months. You're shrinking away from everyone who loves you, and it's because of him. He's controlling you. Her head snapped toward me, and for a moment, I saw that spark of the sister I knew, the one who used to fight back. Lucian, you don't understand. Dorian isn't controlling me. You're just jealous. Jealous? I asked, my hands clenching. Jealous of what? That he's manipulating you? That he's isolating you from the people who care about you? Dorian finally spoke, his voice smooth, almost silk-like. Lucian, maybe it's you who doesn't understand. Elara and I are happy together. She's stronger with me. She doesn't need to be coddled by her family. Mom's hand shook slightly as she rested it on mine. Elara, please. We're not trying to hurt you. We just don't want to see you hurt yourself. The room fell silent, the only sound the rain tapping against the windows. I could feel the weight of every word pressing down on her. I saw her hands tremble, her lips quiver. The conflict wasn't just ours. It was in her, a storm raging between what she felt for Dorian and what she knew deep down was right. And then it happened. She spoke, her voice barely audible, breaking the tension like glass. I can't leave him. Time seemed to stop. Mom gasped softly, Dad's face fell, and I felt a sharp ache in my chest. Elara, you have to think I started. I have thought, she shouted, tears streaming down her face now. I love him. I can't just walk away because you all say so. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to make her see that love shouldn't feel like this, that love shouldn't shrink you down until you're almost unrecognizable. But I stayed still, helpless, because in that moment, I realized that no amount of words, no amount of pleading could make her see what I saw. Dorian stepped closer, putting an arm around her. See? She's fine. Everything's fine, he said, his tone almost patronizing. But I noticed the tension in his jaw, the faint shadow of control beneath the surface calm. I wanted to fight him, to argue, to demand that he step aside. But I knew that any direct confrontation now would only push Elara further into his arms. And so I did the hardest thing I've ever had to do. I let her go for now. I swallowed my anger, my fear, my grief, and I walked out of that house in the pouring rain, feeling like a piece of my heart had been ripped away. The choice she had made wasn't just about a boyfriend. It was about family loyalty, about the invisible bonds that tie us together, and about the heartbreaking reality that sometimes the people you love the most will choose someone else over you. And as I drove home that night, drenched and numb, I realized that the storm wasn't over. It had only begun. Weeks passed after that night, but the tension didn't ease. It only settled into a quiet, painful rhythm. Elara continued to see Dorian regularly, and our family gatherings became strained, careful dances of polite conversation that barely scratched the surface of our feelings. I tried to reach out to her, sending messages, calling, even dropping by once or twice, but she was distant, guarded, and polite only in the way that made you feel both welcome and unwelcome at the same time. I'll admit, there were moments I want to give up entirely. There were nights I lay awake, imagining how different things could have been if she had chosen family, if she had recognized what was happening. I felt helpless, watching from the sidelines as she became more enmeshed with Dorian, her laughter at his jokes louder than it had ever been with us, her eyes focused on him, not me. But I couldn't give up completely. I reminded myself that love and loyalty are not about force, they're about presence. So I started small, finding ways to be there without imposing. I left notes in her mailbox, little reminders that someone still cared, small texts about everyday things, funny memories, anything to keep the bridge intact. Slowly, she started responding, not openly, not without caution, but enough that I knew she still remembered the bond we shared. One Sunday afternoon, she finally agreed to meet me alone, without Dorian this time. We sat at a quiet cafe, rain softly tapping the windows, the kind of rain that always makes conversations feel heavier, more intimate. I didn't mention Dorian immediately. I let her speak first, and she did, hesitant at first, but eventually pouring out fragments of the pressure, the doubt, the fear she felt. I didn't know how to tell you, she said, twisting her cup nervously. I want to make everyone happy, you mom, dad. But I felt trapped. Like no matter what I did, someone would be upset. I reached across the table and took her hand gently. Elara, no one should ever make you feel trapped. Not him, not us. You have to make your own choices, but we'll always be here for you. Even if you stumble or fall, even if you make mistakes. Her eyes glistened with tears, and for the first time in months, I saw a flicker of my little sister, the one who used to laugh at my terrible jokes and confide in me about her dreams. It wasn't perfect, and I knew we had a long road ahead, but it was something, a start. We didn't talk about Dorian much that day because the conversation wasn't about him. It was about us, about family, and about the unbreakable bond that, even through hurt and misunderstandings, still existed. I realized that I couldn't force her to see what I saw, and maybe I never would. But I could be there, patiently, steadily, reminding her that home is always where family is, and love isn't about control. That night, as I drove home through the rain-soaked streets, I felt a strange kind of peace. It wasn't the triumphant resolution I had hoped for months ago, but it was something more important. Hope. Hope that Elara would find her way, and that no matter what happened, our bond could survive. Because family isn't always about perfect decisions or easy victories. Sometimes it's about weathering the storms together, even when the winds threaten to tear you apart. And in that quiet, rainy night, I finally believed that somehow we could endure, even survive this storm.